"24. You know what's funnier than 24? This fucking video." So this super awesome guy person made a video calling the game Super Mario 64 the most overrated video game of all time. All caps, so we know it's important. There's no other context, so I'll just hop straight into it with no further deliberation.
I said it, Mario 64 is the most overrated video game ever.
All new communist creeper police chase set. Look at that, he's getting away with the stolen energy drinks.
I hate your pussy so much.
I recently completed my first playthrough, and all I felt was disappointment. It just isn't good. I expected so much more, and I don't think it's all that unreasonable. People constantly flaunt this game as revolutionary, and sometimes even the best 3D Mario game, and that couldn't be further from what I experienced.
Okay, so like, the Hitler edit is awesome, and it did save my family, but like, time and place. You're trying to prove a point, and editing your screenshot is still a bad idea for that, because even if it's for a funny, you're still editing evidence. Speaking of issues with screenshots, why use the AI to demonstrate that human beings call 64 revolutionary? In my country, we call those things waste machines. Sure, AI pulls its results from online posts and forums, and that could demonstrate that people say what you claim it says, but AI pulls results from everywhere, and verifying the accuracy or reliability of various sources it pulls from is near impossible. For example, AI tells you to eat glue sometimes. The whole reason AI has patches is because it fucks up a lot. You're not even wrong, I'm just telling you to get better evidence.
I'm going to say this right now, if not Nintendo, someone else would have done it. In the time Mario 64 came out, the 3D game development scene was already thriving. There were plenty of other game companies experimenting with 3D. Someone would have beaten Nintendo to the punch had there been more demand for platformers outside of Mario. Sonic does not count.
How do you know that? Did you take your big time machine into Butterfly World 700 and see the progression of 3D games continuing the same way? The way Mario controls is a very specific set of physics that change the way that games controlled and how cameras are positioned. But we'll get to that when he starts giving us actual examples to look at.
Matter of fact, Mario 64 wasn't even the first 3D platformer. The first was this Alpha Waves game. While looking very primitive, it's still more revolutionary than Mario 64 since, well, it's the first of its kind.
Who is calling Mario 64 the first 3D platformer? Your AI screenshot doesn't call it that. It said it revolutionized 3D games, but that's different. I didn't invent sex by fucking your mom, but I still revolutionized sex when I fucked your mom. Following on from that, the Alpha Waves game you're showing plays completely differently. Same goes for all the other games you're demonstrating. The camera and movements are slower than 64, and various other controlling differences, and thus I don't actually think your examples do much of anything other than saying Mario 64 didn't invent the third dimensions in games. No one is saying this. On a third note, Mario 64 isn't just a platformer. It's a platformer collectathon hybrid, thereby meaning these comparisons are useless from the start. Because are any of these other games collectathons? It's also revolutionary in the respect that Mario had previously played far more linearly. Prior games didn't complete their levels by collecting power stars in various open environments. 64's game design in general is just as important to its reputation as it is technologically. And not for fucking your mom, to be clear.
Yet no one talks about it. The best analogy I can make is say that Mario 64 is the worst version of Doom as Doom was to Alpha Wave. Both games refined some things in their genre, but there are newer, dare I say, better installments in both series, and a good chunk of games in the same genre don't really seem to take much from either 64 or the classic Doom nowadays.
First of all, you literally dismissed the idea of Mario 64 being revolutionary because someone else would have done it. So how can you even say it revolutionized other aspects of 3D gaming? Didn't you know Battle for Bikini Bottom would have done it? Secondly, I don't like the insinuation that the later 3D installments didn't take much from 64. 64 introduced a triple jump, backflip, and long jump, staples of 3D, and eventually essentially 2D Mario's moveset. On top of that, Mario Odyssey? The 3D games may have become more linear over time, 3D World and Land especially, that were marketed as 3D versions of 2D games, but Odyssey returned to the classic formula of collectathon platformer hybrid, and outside of Galaxy 1 and 2 is the most acclaimed 3D Mario since the original 64. So it's apparent that bringing back the elements of 64 paid off.
There's really no reason to go back to either outside simplicity, performance, nostalgia, or community reasons, which I'll touch up about later.
I couldn't fit that list on my giant mega penis. What do you mean there's no reason to play the game?
So I am just disregarding Mario 64's revolutionariness, and that understandably will make some of you mad. So before you crucify me, let's get into some of my genuine criticisms of the game, shall we? The level selection's overall bad. I'm just gonna say it. Mario 64 really doesn't feel like a 3D platformer at times. A good chunk of the levels feel like small open zone snow globes that you just walk through and randomly find stars. Outside of the first few stars, there aren't many objectives that are all that clear. I know that's somewhat intentional to get the player to explore these zones, but the majority of the time you'll just uncover them by accident. And a lot of the stars, I swear you can't even get without a guide. Take for example, in Tiny Huge Island, in order to get the 5th star, you need to make it to 5 ultra-specific locations, but there's nothing to signify what locations qualify towards the count outside of a number popping up when you do find one.
They're all small holes of some variety, and itty-bitty implies they're secrets that occur when the world is small. You actually encounter point number 2 when doing Make Wiggler Squirm anyways. It's not much, but there absolutely are indications on how to get the star, and given the goal of exploration, this is one of those stars that if you explore the level like intended, you will just get the star eventually. I have a wider issue with all of these examples, but I'll get to them as time goes on. He has more to give, and I don't want to jump the gun too much.
Also, in Wop's Fortress, during the Blast Away the Wall mission, it's pretty clear that you need to shoot yourself out of the canyon into a wall, but there's nothing to hit towards which wall you're supposed to hit. So you just end up mindlessly shooting yourself like an idiot at all visible walls, wasting a lot of time, or just looking up a guide, which is always boring and defeats the purpose of playing the game.
Sorry for your loss, but I'm different. Also, there's only 2 walls. As mentioned, you have some vague clues, so trial and error isn't nearly as bad as you're making it out to be.
A lot of the time, the first star in the level is just get to the top.
Hi everyone, counting with Communist Creeper and the working class. Show everyone your progress.
One.
It's a 2, you fucking bastard! This is why discrimination exists!
And there aren't even many obstacles in the game. Using Bob-omb Battlefield as an example kind of sucks because it's the first level in the game, so you'd expect it to be easy anyway, but that's still 1 out of 15 levels, almost 7% of the game.
So the first 7% of the game is easy. I'm sure 1 out of 15 levels sounded like a lot when you said it, but when I listen, no, 115 is about as significant as a lock on the outside of a door.
In Bob-omb Battlefield, you can literally get the first couple stars here without jumping. Why? This is supposed to be a platformer game, yet the only form of challenge in this mission is dealing with the crappy camera and finding King Bob-omb. This is stupid.
I understand this game is a platformer, but you're cherry-picking Bob-omb Battlefield. The level meant to get you introduced to the game, and it would have to prioritize the newer, unfamiliar aspects of a Mario game, like the third dimension and the open areas over basic platforming for the players to get used to the level. Also, you said it's possible to get the first few stars without jumping. Not that it's either the intended route or easy. And since Star 2 is a foot race with Koopa the Quick, that's stupid. That sounds like an additional challenge experienced players add on. Anyways, my issue with all of these examples now. You only need 70 out of 120 stars in order to beat the game. You can avoid basically all the examples you're laying out. You're not mentioning playing for 100% completion at any point, so I'd assume you're talking about playing casually. So the issue isn't nearly as big as you're making it out to be.
The difficulty in Mario 64 is out of whack. As I just said, on one hand, you've got missions that are trivially easy, and on the other hand, some missions are borderline impossible without wasting too much time or looking up a guide, neither of which make for a fun or entertaining experience.
You had exactly 1 easy level that wasn't from the first stage. In French, German, and Cantonese, we call that cherry picking. You haven't demonstrated this is a continuous issue throughout the game. At best, you've demonstrated a little bit over the first 7% of the game has this problem. First levels tend to be quite a bit easier to give players either a chance to get good at the game, or if a player just kind of sucks at the game, to give them something they can achieve in the game, especially since we're talking about an all-ages game. Yes, these levels are trivial for you. Now watch little Timmy over here, and suddenly it makes more sense why levels are like this. On top of that, I didn't forget the note about the lack of enemies. Every section in this level has at least a few. Goombas at the start, the chain chomp, and the bombs in the midsection. In certain levels there are water bombs being shot there too. The bowling bitches when climbing up the mountain, and my father and his milk mustache right at the top. Hi, Dad. He's a little shy.
I am not saying all the levels in the game are bad, however. Heck, even some of the bad ones have neat areas. Take, for example, Shifting Sandland, which has an actual level inside of the pyramid. Same case with Lethal Lava Land, except that the level itself is actual platforming, and it's probably my favorite singular level in the entire game. Off topic, but still. And then there are the Bowser levels. These actually feel like Mario levels. I was blown away when I first played them. They're really fun and actually allow you to appreciate the controls of the game. They do make me wonder, why isn't the rest of the game like this? These levels are infinitely better than the open zone ones I just talked about.
Super awesome guy grabbing his hat and stomping on it because the rest of the game isn't in the genre he wants. Like, it's not just what the game is aiming for. Sure, it has platforming elements, but the main goal is collecting the power stars. Might not be the direction you wanted it to go in, but hardly a reason to call it the most overrated game of all time.
The bottom line of this segment is, the levels just aren't overall good. And if you don't agree with me, ask yourself this. Do you really enjoy Rainbow Ride's sluggish carpet and terrible 100 coin process? Do you really like climbing up Tall Mountain 8 times in a row? Do you really like losing all of your progress falling down TikTok clock with one mistake? If you said yes to these questions, you enjoy paying it to be locked up in a rubber room.
I'll grant you Rainbow Ride. In my opinion, its main gimmick is slow and tedious, and getting anywhere takes forever because the stupid fucking carpet moves at the speed of a stone. But the other two is where I have issues. First of all, TikTok clock, it's really just a skill issue. You only face that situation when you make a mistake in the first place. And falling down it is not much different from losing lives in this or other games, which I'm going to assume you have no beef with because you never mentioned that as a problem, so I don't understand your problem there. And I don't even know where you got this climbing Tall Mountain 8 times from. There are 7 stars if you include the 100 coins, and only a handful of said stars actually require you to scale the full mountain. Some, like the slide, assuming you take the intended route, only require parts, and Blast to the Lonely Mushroom really doesn't require much climbing at all, so I'm just kinda confused by that one.
I'm stubborn on this. The levels aren't good and you cannot convince me otherwise.
You like Super Mario 64's level design. Woo!
This kind of loops back to my point on the game's revolutionariness. It was only really revolutionary in the way Mario, or cartoony 3D characters in general, control, which is granted quite the undertaking. But the biggest thing it evolved is the style of Mario games. It just took Mario's character and genre and slapped it into a bloated game of hide and seek. It is rare that I see any mechanics taken from this game in modern or even older 3D platformers outside of Mario, and I'm very curious to hear what people actually believe is so forward thinking with this game. I hear Mario 64 being called revolutionary all the time and I just don't see it. Like, is it the camera? Did it start open world gameplay? I genuinely do not know. Please, someone tell me in the comments.
Do I just vor the earlier part of the clip and spit it out at the end? Or does the clip by itself make the point for me? Following that, he talks about the controls, which he liked except for the wall jump, and yeah, I don't like it either. And then the camera. Leave my goat alone. By leave it alone, I mean, like, kill it with fire.
But the camera isn't even the worst thing about Mario 64. They benched Yoshi! He played such a vital role in the last game, and here he's just a cameo for when you get 120 stars. And what does Yoshi do in this cameo? What was the reason Nintendo decided to include him and make him unwritable? Did he give a final speech? Did he end racism? He himself. He freaking himself.
If I saw into the future and saw I'd be in this video, I'd at least consider.
Alright, the real worst thing about Mario 64 is without a doubt how poorly it aged. This game looks terrible! Textures are repeating everywhere you look, all the models look like flail balls, and the whole game on the original hardware looks so pixelated. Also, the audio is compressed to hell and back.
Chat, is there a good-looking and sounding early 3D game from 1996 on the N64? Textures had to be repeated to fit them on the cartridge size of the game. They wouldn't be able to make each texture unique. It's a hardware limitation.
Now, this is a game from 1996 on one of the worst consoles to ever curse this planet, but still, Nintendo believed this game was worth approximately $10 with terrible input lag in 2013, and they had the balls to charge $20 in 2020 with the 3D All-Stars collection. This is of course given that Nintendo sold the package with the intention each game cost an equal split, which is highly unlikely, but still. Nintendo believes this game is worth approximately $10 to $20.
Yeah, it has roughly 7 hours of content from last time I streamed it, and I knew where all the stars were and only died like twice, so I'd imagine it's a lot longer normally. Also, yeah, $20 thing is wrong, I'll just confirm for you. Older games tend to be cheaper, Galaxy was likely the biggest thing to do with its price.
$50 a year? And I just don't see it. This is like a $5 game at max that you'd pick up on sale for $2.
Okay, Nintendo Switch Online is skeevy as hell, we all agree, but framing that as just Mario 64 is insane dishonesty when accounting for everything that it does. Mario 64 accounts for a tiny portion of that. I'm not sure where this is being gotten from. From there, let me break from the linear format for a bit, because I have some other issues, but I don't think I can go around them in surrounding clips. They're kind of just two separate issues from the end.
SuperAwesomeGuy then quotes people on screen. It's 27 years old and responds, "A game being old does not excuse it from criticism, nor does it automatically make it good/better."
That's not what's being said. Well, the criticism part sometimes. Certain things like its camera and visuals are naturally going to age poorly due to the evolution of technology and it being the first of its kind. It's not particularly fair to drag it in that respect for aspects that it was trial and erroring, particularly in visuals where, well, what were they supposed to do?
I just didn't have a whole lot of fun with it. If it weren't for me planning this video in my head since the release of the 3D All-Stars collection in 2020, I probably wouldn't have beaten this game.
And with that line, I invite you to look back at the rest of this video and say out loud, "Womp womp womp womp." Like, yeah, you didn't like the game, but did you consider that's because you came into it not really wanting or expecting to like it? You apparently planned to make a goofy art video calling it overrated either in the early stages of playing it or before even touching it. Of course you weren't going to like it. You came in with a preconceived notion and wanted to confirmation bias your way into it being legitimate. Final thoughts? This interjection kind of served as a agree with me or die. I'm sure me saying that will make my father love me again. Well, that didn't work.